Picture this, an ocean of sand stretching endlessly toward the horizon. No trees, no grass, just relentless heat, howling winds, and the kind of emptiness that makes you feel like you've reached the edge of the world. This is what a desert is supposed to be: barren, hostile, unforgiving. But what if I told you that right in the middle of one of China's harshest deserts, there's a state-of-the-art ranch housing 8,000 dairy cows, producing over 200 tons of fresh milk every single day? No, this isn't science fiction. And no, this isn't happening in the lush farmlands of Europe or the advanced agricultural zones of the United States. This is happening in China, in a place where survival itself seems impossible, let alone raising thousands of dairy cows. Welcome to the Kubuqi Desert, where technology, ambition, and necessity have collided to create one of the most unexpected farming experiments on the planet. If you're fascinated by stories of human ingenuity pushing the boundaries of what's possible, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what comes next. Now, let's dive deep into this extraordinary story. The milk problem. Why China turned to the desert. To understand why China would even consider building a dairy farm in the desert, we need to start with a simple fact. China has 1.4 billion people. That's roughly 1 out of every 5 people on Earth. And like populations everywhere, the Chinese people need to eat. But more than that, they want to drink milk. Over the past few decades, milk has transformed from a luxury item to a household staple across China. It's in school lunches, breakfast tables, coffee shops, and supermarket aisles. The demand is staggering. In 2024 alone, China produced approximately 40.79 million tons of milk domestically. That sounds like a lot, and it is, but here's the problem. It's still not enough. Even with that massive production, China had to import an additional 2.62 million tons of dairy products from abroad. The cost? Over $10 billion annually. To put that in perspective, that's enough money to buy 123 F-35 stealth fighter jets every single year. For a nation that prides itself on self-sufficiency and food security, this dependency on foreign dairy is both expensive and strategically risky. Global supply chains are fragile, prices fluctuate, political tensions can disrupt trade, so China made a decision: it needed to produce more milk at home. But there's a catch. Raising dairy cows requires 2 things in enormous quantities: land and grass. And in a country where arable land is already stretched thin by the needs of 1.4 billion people, finding suitable space for massive dairy farms is a serious challenge. That's when someone asked a bold, almost ridiculous question. If camels can survive in the desert, why can't cows? A gamble in the sand building the Kubuqi Ranch. The Kubuqi Desert is China's 7th largest desert, sprawling across 21.16 million mu. That's roughly 14,000 square kilometers of sand, rock, and scorching heat. For centuries, it was considered one of the most inhospitable places in the country. Temperatures soar past 50 degrees Celsius in summer. Sandstorms rage without warning. Water is almost non-existent. It's the kind of place where nature seems determined to reject all forms of life. And yet, Chinese scientists and engineers saw potential. In September 2023, a research team backed by $200 million in funding broke ground on what would become the Kubuqi Ranch, a fully modernized, technology-driven dairy farm capable of housing 8,000 cows in climate-controlled comfort. The location wasn't chosen randomly. Just a short distance from the ranch site sits a massive solar power installation covering over 100,000 acres. This photovoltaic base generates roughly 4 billion kilowatt-hours of clean electricity every year, more than enough to power the entire ranch operation without relying on the fragile desert grid. By May 2024, the ranch was complete. What emerged from the sand looked nothing like a traditional farm. Instead of open pastures and wooden barns, the Kubuqi Ranch resembles something out of a futuristic agricultural documentary: fully enclosed, climate-controlled cow houses, automated milking stations operated by 200 robotic arms, intelligent cleaning systems with 20 autonomous robots constantly sweeping and sanitizing the facilities. Inside the cow houses, the temperature never wavers. No matter how brutal the heat outside, the cows live in a perpetual spring, comfortable, calm, and productive. But the real magic happens in the milking area. The robot revolution. Milking without humans. Step inside the milking zone and you'll feel like you've walked onto the set of a high-tech expo rather than a working farm. There are no farmhands in rubber boots, no manual labor, no shouting or herding. Instead, cows move calmly and autonomously toward milking stations, almost as if they've learned the routine themselves. And in a way, they have. Each cow is monitored by sensors that track its health, milk production, and even its mood. When a cow is ready to be milked, it simply walks into one of the 200 automated milking bays. Robotic arms swing into action, using advanced imaging to locate the cow's udders with pinpoint accuracy. The system cleans the teats, attaches the suction devices, and begins milking, all in a matter of seconds. The milk flows through sterile tubes into refrigerated storage tanks, where it's immediately tested for quality and freshness. From there, a cold chain logistics system ensures the milk reaches consumers without ever breaking temperature control. The entire process is unmanned, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Cows can choose when they want to be milked based on their own physiological needs, which actually increases milk production and reduces stress on the animals. Meanwhile, the cleaning robots are just as impressive. Every 25 minutes, a fleet of 20 autonomous sweepers rolls through the cow houses, collecting feed scraps and clearing away manure. The air stays fresh, the floors stay clean, and the cows stay healthy. It's a level of efficiency and hygiene that would be nearly impossible to achieve with human labor alone. The water dilemma. How do you farm in a desert? Of course, all of this raises an obvious question. Where does the water come from? Deserts are defined by one thing above all else: lack of water. And dairy farming is notoriously water-intensive. Cows need to drink, facilities need to be cleaned, crops need to be irrigated. So how does the Kubuqi ranch solve this seemingly impossible problem? The answer lies in geography and decades of environmental planning. The Kubuqi Desert sits in a unique position. It's surrounded on 3 sides by the Yellow River, one of China's most important waterways. Starting back in 2014, the Chinese government began an ambitious project to channel water from the Yellow River into the desert itself. Over the years, this steady flow of water transformed the landscape. Vegetation coverage, which had been below 10%, gradually climbed to over 53%. Wetlands appeared, small lakes formed. The desert, bit by bit, began to bloom. These new water sources now serve as the primary supply for the Kubuqi ranch. But the engineers didn't stop there. They implemented a closed-loop sewage recycling system that captures and purifies wastewater, allowing it to be reused multiple times before being discharged. Even cow manure, which in traditional farms is often a waste problem, gets transformed. Through controlled fermentation, the manure is converted into organic fertilizer and biogas, which can be used to generate additional energy for the ranch. Nothing is wasted. Everything is recycled. Feeding 8,000 cows. The oil sedge bean solution. Water solved, the next challenge was food. Dairy cows are big eaters. A single cow can consume 30 to 50 kilograms of feed every day. Multiply that by 8,000 cows, and you're looking at hundreds of tons of feed required daily. Traditional cattle feed, alfalfa, corn silage, soybeans, requires fertile soil and abundant rainfall. The Kubuqi Desert has neither. So Chinese agronomists turn to a plant that thrives where others fail. The oil sedge bean, also known as Carigana korshinsky. This remarkable legume is a desert survivor. Its roots plunge up to 3 meters underground, tapping into moisture that surface plants can't reach. It withstands extreme heat, sandstorms, and drought. And crucially, it produces protein-rich seeds that can be processed into nutritious cattle feed. Here's how the system works. Farmers plant the oil sedge beans across thousands of acres of desert land. When the plants mature, they harvest the beans and press them to extract a high-quality oil that sells for over $20 per kilogram in local markets. The leftover soybean meal, rich in protein and nutrients, is then mixed into custom-formulated feed for the dairy cows. It's a brilliant two-for-one solution. The ranch gets affordable, sustainable feed, and the local economy gets a new cash crop. As of now, the 8,000 cows at Kubuqi Ranch produce an average of 200 tons of fresh milk per day. But China's ambitions don't stop there. By 2026, the plan is to expand the herd to 20,000 cows, pushing daily production beyond 300 tons. Beyond cows, the desert pig farms. If raising cows in the desert sounds extreme, wait until you hear about the pigs. A few years before the Kubuqi Ranch was built, Chinese farmers began experimenting with raising pigs in desert environments. The goal was the same: reduce dependence on limited farmland and create new agricultural opportunities in underutilized areas. But pigs present even greater challenges than cows. They produce more waste. They need regular cleaning. They consume more water per kilogram of body weight. To make desert pig farming viable, engineers had to rethink every aspect of traditional pig farming. First, they eliminated water-based waste management entirely. Instead of flushing pig waste with water, which would be prohibitively expensive in the desert, they installed fully slatted floors that allow waste to fall through into collection systems below. High-pressure air and mechanical scrapers do the cleaning instead of water. Second, they redesigned drinking systems to eliminate spillage and waste. Combined with intelligent temperature control and misting systems for cooling, they managed to keep water usage to an astonishing 1.6 to 1.8 cubic meters per pig over its entire life cycle, far below the industry average. Third, they created a centralized manure processing system. Waste is transported through pipes to fermentation facilities, where it's converted into organic fertilizer, just like at the dairy ranch. The result? Pigs that grow to around 220 kilograms within a year, breathing clean desert air and living in spacious, well-managed facilities. According to official reports, the meat from these desert-raised pigs has 6 times the inosinic acid content, a compound that enhances flavor, compared to pigs raised in conventional farms. The human story, transforming lives in the desert. Here's something that, often gets overlooked in stories about technological innovation: the people. Around the Kubuqi Desert, roughly 200,000 people call this harsh landscape home. For generations, these communities have struggled with poverty, limited opportunities, and the constant threat of environmental degradation. 30 years ago, a farmer in this region might work sunup to sundown and still earn less than $1,500 per year, barely enough to survive, let alone thrive. These weren't people without ambition or dreams. They were simply trapped by circumstance. Their parents and grandparents had lived on this land. Migration meant abandoning everything familiar and starting over with no resources, no connections, no safety net. So they stayed, and they endured. But the Chinese government made a different choice. Instead of relocating these communities or writing them off as economically unviable, officials decided to bring opportunity to the desert itself. Over the past 2 decades, project after project has moved into the region. Agricultural pilots, livestock experiments, massive solar installations, roads, infrastructure. Each initiative created jobs, income, and hope. The Kubuqi Ranch alone employs hundreds of local residents. Some work as technicians operating the automated systems. Others manage logistics, transportation, and quality control. Farmers who once scratched out a living from barren soil now contract entire livestock facilities, earning steady income and building wealth. Young people who might have fled to cities now learn advanced skills, robotics operation, environmental monitoring, cold chain management. Families save enough money to build proper homes, send their children to university, and plan for futures that once seemed impossible. The desert hasn't just become productive, it's become a place of possibility. Global implications. A model for the world's deserts? China's success in the Kubuqi Desert isn't just a domestic achievement, it's really a proof of concept with global implications. Consider the Sahara Desert in Africa, the largest hot desert in the world, or the Arabian Peninsula in the Middle East, or, the arid regions of South America. We're talking about millions of square kilometers of land that are currently underutilized, often surrounded by impoverished communities that lack economic opportunities. What if the technology and methods developed in China could actually be adapted for these regions? Imagine for a moment solar-powered dairy farms in Sudan, desert pig ranches in Saudi Arabia, aquaculture facilities, yes, raising fish and seafood, nestled among the dunes of Chile's Atacama Desert. It might sound far-fetched, but so did raising 8,000 cows in the Kubuqi Desert just 5 years ago. The key isn't just the technology itself, it's the integrated approach. Renewable energy powers the operations. Water recycling minimizes consumption. Waste becomes fertilizer and fuel. Local communities gain employment and expertise. It's a model that could really reshape how we think about deserts entirely, not as wastelands to be avoided, but as frontiers waiting to be developed. Challenges and criticisms. Not everyone is convinced. Of course, not everyone applauds China's desert farming experiments. Some Western environmentalists have raised concerns about the long-term ecological impact. They argue that introducing large-scale animal agriculture into fragile desert ecosystems could accelerate degradation, deplete underground water sources, and disrupt native species. There's also the question of scalability. The Kubuqi Ranch works because of massive government investment, access to Yellow River water, and proximity to solar power. But, not every desert has these advantages. Could this model be replicated elsewhere without causing more harm than good? These are valid concerns that deserve serious consideration. Sustainable development in extreme environments requires constant monitoring, adaptive management, and a willingness to change course if things go wrong. The fact that vegetation coverage has increased and local ecosystems seem stable so far is encouraging, but it's still early days. The long-term success of projects like Kubuqi Ranch will depend not just on technology and economics, but on environmental stewardship and responsible governance. The future, what comes next? As we look ahead, one thing is clear. The experiment in the Kubuqi Desert is far from over. China plans to continue expanding the ranch, pushing toward the goal of 20,000 dairy cows and more than 300 tons of daily milk production. Beyond that, there are discussions about introducing other forms of agriculture. Vegetables grown in hydroponic systems, fish raised in closed-loop aquaculture tanks, even experimental crops engineered to thrive in extreme conditions. The technologies being tested here, autonomous farming systems, closed-loop resource management, renewable-powered operations, could become the blueprint for agriculture in the 21st century, especially as climate change makes traditional farming regions less predictable. But perhaps the most important lesson from Kubuqi isn't about cows or robots or solar panels. It's about refusing to accept that some places and some people are destined to be left behind. 30 years ago, the Kubuqi Desert was written off as hopeless. Today, it's home to cutting-edge farms, thriving communities, and a new vision of what's possible when innovation meets determination. The desert didn't change on its own. People changed it. One solar panel, one irrigation channel, one dairy cow at a time. Final thoughts, from barren sand to fields of hope. So what have we learned? We've seen how a nation faced with a dairy shortage looked beyond conventional solutions and asked bold questions. We've witnessed technology transforming one of the harshest environments on Earth into a productive, sustainable farming operation. We've explored how economic development can lift communities out of poverty without forcing them to abandon their homes. And we've glimpsed a future where deserts are no longer barriers to human progress, but opportunities waiting to be unlocked. The Kubuqi Ranch is more than a farm. It's a statement, a declaration that with enough creativity, investment, and willingness to take risks, humanity can thrive almost anywhere. The next time you think something is impossible, remember this. Somewhere in the heart of a Chinese desert, 8,000 cows are producing fresh milk under the care of robots, powered by the sun, sustained by recycled water and desert-grown beans. If that's possible, what else might we achieve? If you found this story as fascinating as I did, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We'll continue bringing you stories of innovation, ingenuity, and the remarkable things humans are capable of when we refuse to give up. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep believing that the impossible is just the not yet possible.